who was telling me in her job a couple of weeks ago, somebody was out of the office, and so it's not normally her role, but she needed to answer the phones. So any calls that came in, she had to cover that. And she didn't like that. It was not a comfortable place for her. In fact, she made the comment, she said, "I'm a millennial. We don't answer phone calls. It's scary. We let it go to voicemail. We text." And I kind of chuckle, and some of you probably smile at that, or you shake your heads. Either way, I don't know. But it is a little bit unnatural if you think about it. Like answering a phone call, have this voice that you're supposed to interact with, and you don't get any facial cues, you don't get any physical, like I can't see how this person's posturing toward me, how they're standing, and many of us have sort of learned how to handle that awkwardness of a phone call because we've practiced it. We've answered lots of phone calls, but if you really think about it, it's a learned skill or a learned comfort with something that's really not that comfortable, because answering a call is inherently awkward. I don't know who's calling. I don't know what they're going to ask. My friend was wondering, well, what if I don't know the answers? What if I make a mistake? What if I stumble through something and I'm representing now my organization and this company that I'm answering the phone for, and what if I mess it up? Well, it's a little bit risky because you're on the spot. You know, you get a text or an email and you have some time to think about, well, how do I want to respond to this question? What's the best way? But somebody asks over the phone and you kind of it's necessary that you answer somewhat quickly in some way. So there's a little bit of a risk, so to say. Today we're gonna talk about what it's like to answer a call, not a phone call. We're going to look at the story of Gideon's call and what that was like. And answering a call can be risky. It can feel awkward. It can feel out of place. When the topic of calling comes up in Christian circles, when we talk about answering a call from God, we have some of the same questions that my friend had, I think. Well, how do I know if it's God who's calling? And what am I going to be asked? And what if I don't know how to respond? What if I mess it up? What if I misread the cues and I don't really get what God is asking of me? We kind of have all of those questions that run through our minds. It's risky, isn't it? The story of Gideon, as we just heard it read, and as it's printed in your bulletin if you want to go back to it all, it begins with his calling. So we have that setup that I mentioned earlier that we read at the beginning of worship. This is a setting for Israel. And then we have this call of Gideon. And it's not a calling to faith, but it is a calling to faithfulness. And I want to make that distinction because I think some of the things we're going to learn from this story are best applied to those who are believers. And so I'm guessing that's most of you in the room. If you're here today and you've got some questions or doubts or you're not sure, that's fine. Listen in. But I really think this call that Gideon has is not a calling to faith, but it is a calling to live faithfully. And there's a slight difference there. So how does Gideon react to the call that he receives? Well, I think we see a little bit of doubt, maybe. I think there's some fear. I think he's got, maybe we can call it legitimate strategic concerns. Certainly not excuses, right? He sees the risk in answering this call. And in the end, Gideon wants a sign. He wants something that will make it just obvious that this is the thing that he is supposed to do, that he's supposed to say yes to this. He needs something to tell him that this is obviously where he's supposed to go and what he's supposed to be about. And we read that in Judges 6:17. And Gideon said to him, "If now I have found favor in your eyes, then show me a sign that it is you who speak with me." I think essentially this is what Gideon is saying. He's asking, are you with me? Right? He's asking, are you with me? That's the sign that he wants. After all the other conversation that goes on and the interaction that takes place, this is the heart of the question. Are you with me? He's got fears and doubts and definitely plenty of legitimate strategic concerns. And it's honest of Gideon to finally get to the heart of this matter and ask the one question that really matters. Are you with me? Hit pause on Gideon's story. what's your calling? It's probably not the same as Gideon's, because you're not being ravaged by Midianites. You're not having to take care of your crop somewhere in hiding in a wine press in fear that somebody might steal away your family's food supply. Gideon had a call to something very specific. But every one of us has a calling from God. In academic circles, we run into what's called the theology of vocation. Vocation comes from a Latin word that simply means calling. But it's this idea of when we talk about vocation, that every one of us has a calling, has a vocation of some sort. See, vocation has to do with the roles that we fill in service to other people and in service to our God. That's the easiest way to understand what has God called me to do. If you haven't received a visit from the angel of the Lord, or you haven't received a lightning bolt kind of moment, or a vision in the middle of the night, then the easiest way to discern your calling is to look at who has God given me to love and serve. Because that's how I love and serve my God. What roles and what relationships has He placed me in? So, if you're asking those questions, you can ask just what role has God called me to fill in relation to the people around me, and what is my vocation, and what is my calling toward a spouse? You may have a calling as a parent, or as a child, a calling as a neighbor, a calling as a friend, or a coworker, a calling as a grandparent. Do you know that those roles that you play, those are your calling? That's where God has called you to serve. Unless He calls you in more specific ways, and some of you may be called to more specific things for a season or for an extended period. But those relationships He's given you are the places that He's called you to be His hands and feet, to be His presence in the lives of other people. Most of you, I'm guessing, have probably given some thought to what that means in terms of being a spouse, or being a parent, or being a grandparent, and you see that those pretty easily. I think for many of us it's a little more challenging to think in terms of, well, I have a calling toward my neighbors. I don't even like my neighbors. Like, I wave at them and I hope that they don't come over and start a conversation because I might never get away from them. Like, yeah, you have a calling toward the people that God has placed you in relationship with. Relationship doesn't mean the people that I am attracted to. Relationship means the people that I interact with on a regular basis. So yeah, neighbors and co-workers. Those who are near you, whether it's because you choose to be near or circumstances have placed you near. We have a calling to those people. And we have a calling, when it comes to neighbors and friends, and those, we have a calling to be excellent neighbors, actually. Not just nice and not just polite. Like, that does really well because that's what's expected, right? And that's what sort of keeps the peace. But you represent your God in these relationships. And you're one of His people, and you represent Jesus to these people that He's placed around you. And your God is excellent. I mean, He goes out of His way to show love. He goes above and beyond to give grace. He goes to unexpected lengths. And He does completely unexpected things. And He sends you to do the same. So I started off by saying that answering a call can be a little bit scary. It can be risky. My question for you is which relationship brings up some sense of risk or some sense of fear when you think of responding to that relationship as a call? Where do you feel the risk? Awkward interactions are risky, right? Upsetting people is a risk that we take sometimes. Feeling like I've been taken advantage of when I seek to serve someone, that's a risk. And going out of your way to build a friendship with someone who might not even seem all that interested in having a new friend is a risk. But going out of your way to build a relationship, it might actually look a little bit like what your God does for you, if you think about it. And so, as you're thinking about all those relationships and what your calling is, I want to encourage you to ask Gideon's question as well. I think it's okay to ask your God, are you with me, God? I see the calling that you've given me. I understand that you've called me to be salt and light. You've called me to be your child. You've called me to represent you in these places and in these relationships. So I need to know, God, are you with me? I think it's okay to ask that. And Gideon's sign, if we go to his story, right, his sign was very unexpected. I mean, he goes away to get some food, and really, he says, wait here, let me take care of you, because he realizes he sort of skipped over some rules of hospitality. Like, he's got a guest who showed up, and he needs to serve his guest, not just have these questions bombarded up upon him. And so Gideon goes away to get some food. He's not preparing a sacrifice. He's getting snacks out. Okay? This is Gideon going away and grabbing some hot wings that he can throw in the oven and maybe some nachos, and he's going to put this out in front of the guy, or maybe at your house it's more like he's ordering a couple of pizzas. Okay? Because suddenly you have a guest and you weren't prepared for that. That's what he's doing. And then he shows up and he places it before the angel of the Lord, and the Lord says, put it on the rock over there, right? And it's consumed with fire. And the man he's been talking to disappears. And that's the sign. That's the sign that God gives. And in the midst of a very common practice of hospitality, of caring for a guest, of something very ordinary, God takes the ordinary and makes it holy. And that's what our God does. That's what our God does. He takes ordinary things and he makes them holy. And that's the sign that he gives Gideon. See, and you've seen this sign as well. You've seen your God do this. You've seen this in Jesus, right? Because Jesus was born as a man. He was born from his mother Mary. He's born the way that every one of us was born. We had a mother who carried us to term, or very close to it, I hope. And he was born into this world in a very ordinary way. But he was anything but an ordinary man. See, Jesus was the Son of God, right? Yeah. And he lived an ordinary life. I mean, he ate food when he got hungry. When he got tired, he needed to sleep. When his legs were weary, he needed to sit down or lie down like any one of us. But his was anything but an ordinary life. See, his life wasn't ordinary because death could not stop his life. He died, yet he lives. And he's man, yet he's God. He is ordinary. He is holy. See, our God takes ordinary things and makes them holy. And he continues to do this, and he continues to give you these signs. Because he takes ordinary water, and he combines it with his word and his promise, and he makes it holy. And he did that in your baptism. He claims you as his own. He takes ordinary bread and wine, like we have up here on the altar this morning, and he makes it holy. He makes it holy by the work of his Son Jesus, by his death on the cross, by giving his body and his blood. And these are your signs. Gideon had his sign. You have signs as well. These are the works of your God in your midst. In the midst of your calling. But wait, there's actually more to it than this. There's more to it than this even in Gideon's story. Because what happens after Gideon receives his revelation from God? After he receives this sign, God calls on him to do something. Right? And it's not the final piece, because when the messenger shows up, he tells Gideon, hey, you're going to save people from the Midianites. But that's not the first thing that he's actually called to, is it? That's what he's going to do eventually. But after this confirmation, and after this, God, I need to know if you're with me question, and this sign that he receives, then he's called to do something. He's called to tear down the Asherah, which is this long pole, basically. And it's a form of worship. Asherah was a goddess of fertility. So you have this Asherah pole and you have this altar of Baal. So you have a female and a male god and goddess, both of fertility. So you can imagine the kind of symbolism going on there. He's told to tear them down. He's told to destroy them. And offer them as wood. Take these bulls, these oxen that your father has, tear them down, and then offer the oxen as sacrifices to me, and use wood from the altar and from the Asherah pole. Burn that for the fire. That's what he's told to do. And really what's happening here, after Gideon asks the question, God, are you with me? And God shows him how he takes ordinary things and makes them holy. Then God asks a question, okay? And God turns around and he asks the question, are you with me? And he gives him something to do. He asks Gideon, okay, Gideon, are you with me? And we shouldn't be surprised at that. We shouldn't be surprised when we ask the question, God, are you with me? That he would turn around and ask us, like he asked Gideon, are you with me? Because when we ask God to be with us, it's always a little bit backward, isn't it? Because God's call, if we're talking about responding to a calling from God, God's call never sends us away from him. So responding to his call will never send us away. It will always place us near our God. And when we become uncertain and we ask our God, well, God, are you with me? It's actually a little bit out of place. And like Gideon, you and I need the reminder too. And we need our God asking us the question, okay, are you with me? Because if you're with God, you'll do the things that a person of faith would do. You won't stand for other gods, is what he's telling Gideon. You'll do the things that a person of faith does. You'll pray, and you'll praise, and you'll worship, and you'll serve, and you'll learn, and you'll give, and you'll love your neighbor. And Gideon, for his conversation with God and for all that he's asked to do, Gideon, he's faithful. Kind of, right? He's faithful in a faltering way. Maybe in a hesitant way, because this is what we read. It says, so Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord told him. But because he was too afraid of his family and the men of the town to do it by day, he did it by night. So Gideon was faithful. It was a bit of a faltering faith. See, when Gideon asked for a sign that God was with him, he probably thought that sign came there, right there in the moment, right? It was the burning up of the things. But I want to say maybe that was just a smaller sign. Maybe that wasn't the real confirmation that God needed to give Gideon. Maybe that was just enough to get him moving in the right direction. Because let me tell you what we didn't read in this story, and what comes in the verses immediately following. See, the men of the town, they wake up and they find out that their shrine to the god and goddess that they worship, it's been torn down, it's been burned up. And they see that it's destroyed. And they ask around and they find out that Gideon did this. And they go to Gideon's father, Joash. And they demand that Joash send his son out because they want to kill him. They want to put him to death. They want to put Gideon to death for what he's done. Now get this. The altar to Baal and the Asherah pole and the land that they were on, they belonged to Joash. They belonged to Gideon's dad. So he's the one who supplied the space. He's the one who took care of this shrine, this place of worship. And his son destroys it. And the people probably very much expect, like, the dad's gonna send his son up. But what does Joash say? He says this: will you contend for Baal? Or will you save him? Whoever contends for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because his altar has been broken down. So Joash's father stands up for him. The people back down. And in the next verses, we're told that as neighboring nations gather, and as the Midianites and others gather to go to war and to pillage the land of Israel once again, it says, the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon. And Gideon is the one who calls out Israel to meet this threat. So I say God provided maybe a small sign to get Gideon moving in the right direction. But he provided two more signs of his presence as Gideon began to practice even this faltering faith. As Gideon began to move in the direction that God was calling him, then God confirmed that Gideon was moving the right way. Because we see here the sign of a father's protection, and we see a sign of the Spirit's presence in Gideon's life. And let me say this to you as you consider what it means for you to follow the calling of your God. Your faltering faith gives opportunity for God to reveal His perfect faithfulness. See, even your faltering steps forward, even as Gideon followed God, but he did it by night because he wasn't so sure that it was a safe thing to do. Even as you take those small steps in response to your God's call, it gives opportunity for God to reveal to you His perfect faithfulness, His bigger faithfulness to you as His child. Because even your faltering faith, when you begin to move in the direction of His call, will open your eyes. And even your hesitant faith is going to get you moving in the right direction, the direction that your God has called you. And even those small steps, respond to God's question, are you with me? So step forward in loving your neighbors, and start slowly if you need to. Respond to God's calling, even if it's cautiously at first. Engage those legitimate strategic concerns and move ahead despite their presence. And as you do these things, I think like Gideon, you'll see the protection of a loving Father, and you'll know the presence of the Spirit of your God. See, these were Gideon's signs. These are the real signs, I think, affirming his call. And these are your signs as well. Your faltering faith gives opportunity for God to reveal His perfect faithfulness.